PR Connections Radio presents.
Did you know your clothing could help balance your body's pH levels? Our cutting-edge fabric technology naturally promotes optimal pH balance, helping you feel energized, refreshed, and at your best every day. Use promo code PRTalk for more info. Tap the link in the description or contact our experts at 702-445-9488 to learn more.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Oh my gosh, we're ending October, Breast Awareness Month, International Menopause Day, and all the best subjects close to my heart, all about women. And so today, here I am, Lisa Vasquez, your host on Liberating Menopause, Women in the Workplace. So this is going to be an interesting conversation because today we're going to be talking about really the lion beneath the foot wisdom for women at work, because is anybody really thinking about that? Now, I bring this up and say this only because, 45 years, majority of my work, I'm telling you about at least 96.5% was standing up, walking around, running around, always on my feet, always, always getting good shoes, always really not knowing again that at this point of our lives, as I rotated through all the years of hormonal changes, I wasn't educated. Nobody really was back then. Let's put it that way. I mean, not like we are today, and not like I like to bring to you today, to corporate, to, women in the workplace, leaders, everyone who really needs to hear this, because that leadership needs to go into a shift of more caring, more supporting, more really bringing on how we need to bring these conversations without feeling intimidated. I mean, how come we can't just call in and say, I'm sorry, today I'm just so, full of anxiety, or, I didn't sleep all night. Even if you said that, they would look at it and probably think, well, what were you doing up all night? They're not going to think that it was a hormonal shift. And majority of the time, you're not going to really even know that it was a hormonal shift. So when I was going through a lot of these changes, and I have to say, because of the long term focus that I had as I would walk into all these stages, I knew how to maneuver things, but I couldn't pinpoint and say that, my hormones were showing. I couldn't do that because I didn't know. I can see it now as I trail, because every 5 years I've had a goal. So I could see what happened in my 30s. I could see when I hit 35. I can see what happened to me at 46 when I really blew up. And, the heart of perimenopause. I mean, but who knew? I didn't. So, I'm gaining all this weight and noticing this big difference and blaming it on marriage, blaming it on the bliss, because I had been married going on 10 years. And that's what they say, right? At 10-year bliss, you start to really see the effects, and, you're comfortable. You're always going out eating, whatever you're doing. Well, trust me, I had the effects and it showed. So, that was the first time I hired a coach. And sure, I had some slim down moments, but nothing compared to where I'm at today. Nothing compared to, the man who taught me, he was a great guy, good old Brad. If it wasn't for him, I could have never did a push-up today. I'm just loving those things, especially for my upper arm strength. But back then, because they didn't put together our hormonal status and state, and that this is bloating and this is where you're at. No, they were just looking at it as the nourishment, taking down a diary of things that I'm eating, looking back to my past of what I had ate and what brought me to this point, things like that. And going through that, nothing was ever in the concerns of, hey, you're in perimenopause, you're about to, these things are about to change. Not even, honestly, my doctors. All we did was, do our labs and things like that, but nobody brought that up. And this is why I bring this education to you. This is why I enjoy going to speak to women in the workplace and talk about this and bring this to even people that I, groups that I go with, because it's so important to know that these hormones are really our big effects in these years that we are most importantly the reproductive system hormones, because we have a lot of other hormones that can really affect your digestion and different things like that. But when we were talking about these shifts of estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, all these things, we didn't know how we put this all together. And today, really understanding that, I'm not sure where you're at today, what years you're in that's listening to this. I really hope I have everybody, because from 30 on and beyond and, into our years of longevity, I mean, 70s, 80s, it's just so important to understand this, because sometimes you feel like you're the one that was broken. You didn't understand that it was what was not nourished. This is why it's called the lion, because after we go through our 20s and 30s, I mean, we are fully loaded hormonally, we're pretty, and I'm not saying balanced, because we're not really focused and in the process of forming a good nourishment role as we roll through those years. But the body has its, again, looking at it as a gas tank, if you see the measurements and you can see, you're pretty much on a full tank, right? And now it's starting to shift. So now when you're in your 30s, late 30s, 40s, you get those little signs, those little whispers, and you have to understand those are like little slow leaks. They're not just popping up just because, and not just suddenly, and not just maybe because you just came out of having a good fun time partying life or anything like that. That now you can see clearer. No, it's nothing like that. These little slow leaks start to begin, and they're whispering, and sometimes they could be aching in your joints. Sometimes, there's just so many things. Recently, cortisol is our biggest, it could be in favor for us, because it's a good thing when we do it correctly and nourish our cortisol and keep our stress levels intact, and, look out for things that can really inflame our bodies, different carbs, different things that we eat, different, foods and things like that. And I am going to have my Facebook group posting a link there. And I really hope, if you're very interested in this, you join me there, because that's where I really give a lot of details and education, and really get into more of this cycle of the hormones. Here today, I really like to just bring the attention to the workplace to know that these things are happening, and women need a better structure at work. They need more support. They need to be known that they can, I don't know what happened to personal days. And when we had them a long time ago, we took them as a personal day of not so much because we were having a hormonal issue. And maybe we did back then, but it wasn't tagged that way. And I really believe that those personal days should either come back, or there should be some kind of flag day that we could note that, because it's the ages and the stages. And this happens to everybody, but we're looked at like we should just be on that belt, that belt that's in the shop, when you're putting your food down on the belt and it's going to the cashier, and we just keep rolling and rolling. And that's how women are looked at. We just keep rolling. And they're not looking at, oh my gosh, Susie just turned 40. I should check on her. I should see how is she feeling, No, they're not looking at that. And then when we get to 50s, we're getting even more sick. And, I've had friends that I've worked with, and a lot more mature women, and, they've had heart issues. They've had all these problems internally, but they still came to work. And, mostly because of the support, mostly because of the benefits that they had. And they really had to really struggle through. Husband lost their job, hard for him to get another job. So she's pushing through. Her daughter moved back in with the granddaughter. And, so now she has this extra part of life added to her in the supporting. And even though, yes, the daughter did work, but point being is that my friend, she had a bit of a big struggle for her age. And I would always check on her, say hi, but again, not knowing that it was a hormonal change, not knowing that because women, we are a high rate of heart problems and things like that, but nobody says exactly why. So, today, as we come into this conversation, more than, foot pain, it's about that lying beneath. And so what happens when we come closer to those 40s, you're going to hear him roar a little more, and just like any lion, if you nourish him, if you give him what he wants and you feed it and you give it the balance, he's going to really stay in his garden and, just watch, because I love watching lions, and they just like to look out into, as they're protecting their family there, they're really looking out into the meadows and just really relaxing unless something stirs them up. And that's how come calling it the lion that we awaken, is because he does wake and he will attack. And this is where that hormonal transition comes into, the impact of what estrogen does, just the estrogen. I mean, again, I don't want to get into every single hormone because, there's a whole conversation about that. But I know you heard of these phrases, and I know you've heard of estrogen. But did you know how this foot pain can come from that? Did you know that, I know, with today's world of, our economy and things, our prices are going up, and different issues that are occurring in our food, groceries, all those things. But shoes are being popped out, made really quick, really, the foundation of the bottom of them, they're not always the safest ones. And then, depending where you're working at, those feet want to look cute. So you're going to put on some cute shoes. And I just hope that, there's support, things that can be put into those shoes to give you a little bit more relaxation compared to how it would be if you didn't have that cushion support. But that doesn't really cure everything, because that shoe is so important. And, just like that song, these boots are made for walking. Well, our feet are, but they're our legacy, because that's what's going to take us back and forth. And when we're not really paying attention to that, when we're running through work, I mean, even in the medical field, it kind of upsets me. But you can see that when women are running around with their gym shoes on, I don't know what you would call them, walking shoes, what have you. Sometimes they're so low down to the bottom, they're kind of, killing it on that shoe. That shoe is really taking a lot, but they still wear them all the time, and there has to be a bell ringer to say, hey, it's time to change that shoe, because, you're losing all that. So the thickness at the bottom is going, and the floors that we run on when we're in the medical centers is not, the best kind of floors for our feet to have that kind of balance throughout those years. That's why we have nurses' shoes. You can go to the medical uniforms where we get uniforms at, and they always have a really great selection of shoes. There's a lot of great shoe stores that support the medical system, or, the working class people. But those shoes can be expensive. Yes. They can run to $125 today. 2 years later, I'm not really sure what it costs, because I just know what I used to pay. And by paying that, not knowing, again, I'm investing in my future health, not knowing that I had been supporting my feet. And luckily I had, because the things that I read today about what happens to us, I don't know, a lot of people, I have met women and the center of their foot falls, right? That one arch collapses. And I'm not sure exactly what, all I've heard in the past is, how it's collapsed, and tricks that people do, right? They'll roll up some paper towels and stuff and stick it inside that arch just to give it a little lift up, push up and stuff like that, but not really explaining and understanding that this was an estrogen change. It's not part of the conversation. It's just that this is what happened. I'm having a hard time walking, so this is what I've stuck in my shoe. And these were the little tricks and leadership signs of, more wisdom compared to the younger wisdom, because we don't know that until it happens. And all of a sudden my arch fell. I don't know what happened. Well, that's because the estrogen declines, the collagen quality drops, and making ligaments and what they call the fascia less resilient. And that's inside the foot. So meaning that it's going to collapse. I mean, we have so many fibers and things in our body that can hold us up for so long. And when it's not having the right balance, the right shoe, the right support to keep that arch, to keep it from falling down, these are things that are going to occur and create more complications in our life, because we have to go to work. We have to be on our feet. Depending if it's a mother who has double duty because she's caretaking besides children care and, home care, things that she has to do besides her work, always on her feet, right? I mean, sometimes that's why when you kick your shoes off, you don't see that how, you feel the heat, that they were burning, you got to get out of those shoes. But the point being is that if you know that those shoes are not the best comfort, it's important to really think about what has just occurred and why, and what time is it going to be when you're going to get that new pair of shoes that's going to be more relaxing. I mean, I get all that because, again, I ran around on my feet all the time, I mean, again, too, I want to say, for corporate and everybody in the workplace who leads us, and, in some employments as employees, you can have gifts received. It needs to be something more that's going to give us more comfort and really invest in our comfort. And I know a lot of things in life are not supposed to be comfortable. That's not what we were made to do. We're here to create the comforts of our life, right? But with their support, really sending you out. I mean, even bringing a foot doctor into the place of the workplace, just to come check out all the employees and see what's happening, because, things happen to the toenails. And this is why the conversation I wanted to speak on this is because one of my friends asked me, as we're in this 6th decade, and I'm coming to the mid part of it, my 5th part of the chapter, she's in the beginning parts, but she asked me that question about how your feet look. She said, have you noticed it aging? Have you noticed? And I was like, oh my gosh, no. So I did look down, I did look at my feet, and no, because I do know of the things that I had taken care of, monitoring the inflammation, monitoring, your hormones, keeping them in balance, nourishing them. I do what it needs, what my body needs. I really respond to it. I look for more questions in our growth, because nobody's really come this far into life that can really give back that feedback of things are, as I said, I could tell you the plan. I could tell you what I've been doing. I can tell you all these great things of what have led me here, and in the past, when I worked with all these women, again, I must say, by the time they came near their 6th decade of life, it was all chronological disease. It was a lot of age problems. It was a lot of health concerns. It was a lot of people broke their hips, or, having heart issues where they have to go see the doctor on the heart, being diabetic, big one, really huge, having kidney issues. I mean, I stood there and I seen every walk of life of women's bodies change, transition, and go into these illnesses. And of course, I just wanted to be there and say, wow, what do I need to do for that not to happen? What do I need to do for that not to happen? Because again, remember, I'm looking inside the body. I'm, hanging out with ultrasound, learning what she just read off of somebody's ultrasound. I'm sitting with the radiologist and, wow, doc, really? Wow, what was that? CT scans, MRI scans are up. You want to know. It's just so incredible because the language is so internal. And it's like really knowing sign language, but for the body, because the body speaks. So when you know that, that's what's important. And that's not what we know when we're just out totally, being busy, living, working, doing all those things. I mean, unless you really have the focus through that kind of lens, it's hard to see this. Even being nurses and doctors and stuff like that, they see these things and know these things. And it's important that when you talk to them, but sometimes today they don't have a lot of time to give us an explanation and tell us things. So this is again why I like to bring these things to your attention, because depending, you could be 35 years old, and you've been in this career for 10 years already, you're looking long term. It's those preparations and steps that you take. It's really looking at where you're walking, what kind of room it is, things that we need to support our feet, the comforts of the socks that you're putting on. Are you moisturizing those feet at nighttime? And I'm talking like an organic, more natural lotion, not just, the ones that are toxic, the junky ones that, can really create a health issue, because anything, again, as I told you, we put onto our skin is automatically absorbed into our body. So, knowing that you're caring for yourself in that self-care and self-love way of looking out all the way around you. I don't know if you've ever played chess. I love the game myself. Growing up with that game, it really does teach you the strategies. It really does give you that checklist that you need to check off. My cover here, is this okay? When I go to work tomorrow, I'm starting a new job, and am I in the right attire? Are my shoes going to be good? Or you're not wearing the right shoes. You get to the job and say, oh my gosh, these shoes are going to kill me. And you got to go through 8 hours of that day until you can get home and rethink this program and what you need to go get for those shoes to really bring you comfort into that line of new work that you're doing. But for those of you who have already been there, and if you're feeling any of these things, foot swelling, fluid imbalances. The other day, there's so many ways today that people talk about hormones, and they really, the way they broke this one down, they were talking about cortisol face. Anybody ever hear of that? It's called cortisol face. And in a lot of illnesses and sites that I see, there's a lot of inflammation that's gained. And in those conversations on those links, they'll talk about, as soon as I had whatever removed, I lost 10 pounds of inflammation. So we're not really seeing all this inflammation build up. And inflammation, of course, is, very destructive in the body. It kind of chokes our body a lot. And so they brought up this subject, like, do you have cortisol face? And I was like, oh my gosh, what a way to say that. In other words, you have a lot of inflammation. Did you ever look at your face and it's, pretty chubby, and you're thinking it's chubby because of food and things like that, but they're speaking on the levels of our hormones and saying cortisol face. We're going to really get into that one next week, because I thought that was pretty fascinating. But my conversation today is bringing up the fact of the inflammation because of the foot swelling that we receive. Of course, the hormonal shifts that affect our fluid retention. There's so much. And we're not drinking a lot of water and hydrating, we're holding on to that, and we're not flushing any of those toxins out, So there's a lot of cool things that really we can do ourselves and have that reaction, and leading to swelling around your joints and under the arch, often mistaken for injuries. So, you're thinking you're having that joint pain, and you're having, it could possibly be carpal tunnel. I'm not saying that it's not, but right away, that's kind of the first thing that comes to people's minds. It's not so much that, oh my gosh, I ate so much salt yesterday, and the inflammation is killing me. It's showing up in my face. It's bloated. So one of my friends, she did some hormones, and she wasn't feeling good about them. And she told me how she woke up the next day with bloating in her face, and that's where she's seen it. So, but she knew that she had just put something new into her body. So she knew what to, pinpoint to in a daily life and a busy life of mom, woman, even a single woman, because, you're invested in, going out, hanging out, being at, wherever you go to gather in the restaurants and talk, and all this processed foods and junk. And the first thing that they serve is all salty. A lot of carbs are at the beginning. If you really understood how important it is when you're eating carbohydrates, how that inflammation, all these things start to gather in our bodies and just accumulate. And the only time the warnings come is really when something really, really gives up an upset in the body, whether, there's just so many different things. And so by bringing up this conversation, inflammation, cortisol, we are going to talk about that a little bit next week, because I really need you to see yourself and recognize these things, because again, this is your legacy. We're walking on these feet that are going to take us all the way through. I mean, they're not going nowhere. And if we're not paying attention to that bottom rack down there that's carrying us through all this, did you know? I mean, a lot of times foot problems can also create a lot more different inflammation. Your feet carry you through your careers. I mean, there's different ways that we're not listening. We're not listening to the breakdowns. And this is why I wanted to bring it up and talk about to get our attention. Bunions. Did you know bunions and joint stiffness? That's an aging and hormonal change that contributes to the joints misalignment and stiffness. I didn't know that. I mean, I've heard bunions forever. I thought, possibly bad shoes for sure, but and that's what they would say, and then you put those little bunion pads on and people wear those, and that bony bump at the base of the big toe, it becomes more common and painful with times. But we didn't look at it as an aging and a hormonal change and contribution. Behind your legs, there's tendons down in the bottom of your ankles, right around there, and the support arch, and a hormonal weakening and weight gain. Oh, we didn't even get into that part. That can cause it to strain or tear. And sometimes in our foot, we can have these stress fractures. These stress fractures, they're lower estrogen levels. They reduce the bone density and increase in the risk of more stress. And these fractures in the foot and ankles are particularly in postmenopausal women. And I've seen that. Sometimes women come in with these spurs. They're called spurs that can build up in your foot, and they're very painful. So, but what I don't want us to do is wait until all that starts to arrive, because sometimes those are the points of no return. There's points that another person I know who found out later in life, like actually right by her 60th birthday, how bad from her neck down to her lower back. The whole spine is a mess. She didn't know, because she kept pushing through. She kept working. She was younger than me for sure, but she didn't know. And, I would see her working really hard and doing all these things, but, you can't really tell people. I mean, this is choices, and these are things that really have to come through you to you. And this is why once I say these things, and if you're listening, and I hope you are, you cannot unhear this. So it is something that I want to plant those seeds. I really want to plant buckets of, flowers to grow out of these seeds that I put in there. The health. I mean, I only came this far to be this way, and how I present myself to you is because of the help of the women who guided me on this road to longevity. And that's why, again, I always talk about that I have to give this back. I really do, because I wish every 18-year-old woman, girl, lady, teenager, you're still 18, right? Can be in a place where I was when I enrolled into the school of radiology. I mean, back then in the 80s, it was so rare, and I was so blessed to have received the message to do this. And that's thanks to I fell off my bike or something and went to get an x-ray at one of the old hospitals. So I got to see the old imaging tables that they put me on, and then the old generating machines that they would expose me from, and I was like, oh, look at that girl, so it's taking pictures, right? So I wanted to be that hospital photographer, I wanted to be part of that, but I didn't know the magic and what was going to be involved and what, I was thinking about. It's just crazy. Because again, I wish everybody can be there to see this, to grow through this, to learn from this. And since you can't, I'm bringing it to you, giving it to you through this legacy of my conversation of this great podcast that, Liberating Menopause, prconnectionsradio.com. I mean, if they didn't hear me and accept me, I am getting ready for my third third season, and this is exciting because my voice is being heard. We've had over 100 downloads worldwide, and that's really exciting because if you can't listen to me now, at least just plug in and get a hookup and, catch me later. But everything I tell you is for our daily walk of life that's going to get you through a better part of life as you go through each decade of your life, because as I said, 40s is really more when that lion wakes up, and when you start to calm him down and give him what he wants and understand. Don't forget, we have to check those gauges of the hormones. We have to, and that's between 35 and 40, just to see where is that tank lining at. Where is estrogen? Do I even have any? I mean, you can see there's so many different issues that can happen. You know that the dry, cracked heels and calluses, that's another estrogen, because it helps retain moisture, and it's declining during menopause, so it causes the dry, thickened skin, and it's leading to painful tissues and calluses, and that can bleed or become infected. And I've seen a lot of that as I was doing radiology, people coming through the emergency rooms. We had to do foot x-rays, so we had to look at the feet. We had to work with the feet. Some cases you really had to put on some gloves because they were so dry. But they didn't know it was the loss of hormones that were creating these changes. They're on medications, and a lot more of the senior people. It wasn't really the 30s or 40s. And recently, I was what's her name? She's on The View, Joyce. They were showing, because she's like 80, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and she actually showed her feet because she has pretty feet. I mean, and she's been on them for a lot of years, right? And so look into that and really taking the time to get a pedicure once in a while, or back to the business, back to corporate, back to somebody coming in and giving out cards for you to just go, especially if they know that you're on your feet all day. Cashiers, people that work in retail, besides the medical field. These are gifts that would really change the way you are when you come to work, because I know a lot of years there was nothing, and here we are. Radiology is always celebrated November 5th. Oh boy, it better be November 8th. And that's the year that, when it was discovered back in it was 1837. I'm going to have to catch you up on that one next time. But, it's been a couple of years since I've celebrated this. But that's when radiology. So we used to get lots of programs, different reps would come in and, really support us. And the job would give us dinners and luncheons and things like that. Well, things changed then as the years went on. We weren't receiving any of that anymore. And so, but this is what I'm saying, having that potluck and having these little pedicure cards passed out, even if it's just for a pedicure. You could add the rest, but at least it's going to get you in there. And at least it's showing that they're supporting you, because they know that. People who sit down all the time, to go someplace where that massage can be done, or, for the back, just to relax the back and the tension and get all that build up. Again, inflammation, junk, all this stuff. I have to tell you that recently I've come across, and I work with a new global company, and I'm really excited about this, because as much as I've been able to talk, as much as I've been able to, I wrote books, and especially my hormonal book, having my podcast, having my live Facebook group, and now this company, it's worldwide, it's global, but it's all nourishment. It's all for women. And I've been on a couple of things lately. Biggest one was something that clears out a lot of inflammation. And this is why I want to invite you into my Facebook group, because you can hear a lot more about it and see there's so many cool things that are transitioning. I don't know if you could notice, but my skin, oh my gosh, I feel like it's just getting healthier, bigger glow. And on August 30th, I went to a party, and I seen this picture that I've taken. I actually joined Fabulous Over 40, right? That's to raise money for the charities and breast cancer and, really present women, Fabulous Over 40, right? And I was looking at my face and I started one of the programs that I'm talking about. It's really great stuff for inflammation, actually for internal connections. And it's really cool because it's a nourishing that we've never been able to really connect with for women's health. I mean, again, all I heard back then were issues occurring and doctor's appointments and medications that were having to be added to the body and all these different things. There was never a cure to say, oh my gosh, I got rid of this mid belly, and that's our biggest problem as we mature, the insulin resistance and things like that build up. So, all I was able to see was that. And here we are 40 years later. And that's why I'm excited about this company that I enrolled with to be partners with, because it's like, I call it my bloom bar, because you can go through anything. And it's like, those catalogs we used to have women who would show you makeup and different things like that. They bring the doorbell back in the day and, here I am, and show you lipsticks, things like that. Well, that's what's so cool about this, because it's all nutrients, it's all body building. It's things that you can use as energy drinks, but they're all full of nourishment, just everything that just nourishes the body. And I'm just loving it. And, totally want to share that with you because I could see the difference that I was having a cortisol phase. I had to have because that was another thing. I've lost about 6 inches off my waist. So I can't imagine what was lost off my face. And I wouldn't have known it if I hadn't seen that picture. Because when I saw the title of somebody reaching out, hey, do you have cortisol face? When I read that, I was like, wow, what a way to put that, And does anybody really know what a cortisol face is, because he didn't explain it on that introduction or posting that was out. It just said cortisol face, so of course what is cortisol face? And, that has to do with a lot of inflammation and the bloating and things that happen to our face. So, I was interested and very happy to know that it's been 9 weeks now since I had done I've been doing this program. It's a 30-day thing 90-day program. And so to be in this 9th week, to be able to express this, to be able to prepare my body for that 5th chapter of this 6th decade and really be ready with, it's like blowing out the engine in the car. It's like clearing out all the filters. It's like, it's crazy. And I'm just loving and knowing that now I have things more to offer women. So these Oh, sorry about that. That was pretty scary. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I hate when those connections get dropped. That wasn't too cool. But, today, as we do really close out on this subject. It's women make up over half the global workforce, and so many still yet suffer in silence and pushing through pain and wearing shoes that hurt and feeling uncomfortable discussing health challenges and with their managers. I don't understand why. I do understand why, because I hate knowing that when there was times that I called in, you really have to think about, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? I can't say I was up all night. She's going to think, well, you shouldn't have been up all night. You should have been sleeping. No, I was having a hormonal change, and you can't say that, because then you, outside of letting them know that you're having these effects, a lot of women don't want to admit that, but it's true. And we know it, and we see you, and we know you're in one of those phases and stages, and we know that you're having some kind of body upsets, because that's just the flow of our life until we step out of it. And that's why what we do today, because today is our tomorrow, right? That's why it's so important today, because what we're preparing for is that big long-term tomorrow. And we really want to be there. And I'm telling you, fully intact with, cutting back on really visiting that medical center, right? Really just going for your annual checkups, your annual screenings. Another thing I'm excited about is because I'm getting ready to enroll in Medicare. Anybody out there doing that? Because it's time if you're in this age bracket and you got to get those Medicare programs set up. It's funny because 45 years I've been under my husband's health insurance that were great benefits. And now it's a shift that I got to think of, what am I going to do? How's this going to work? It's all so new. So make sure that you really talk to somebody good, or really go listen to somebody on that subject, because the choices, again, you make, they're going to be locked in. And you really have to know what's wrong with you, what you might need. But if you know that you're headed on a more healthier lifestyle, focus on the way you live, getting everything you need, right? Your sunlight, first thing in the morning. When you need that vitamin D, it should be first thing in the morning when you're out in that sun. That's where we get that from, making sure that you slept, and you slept following the sun system, right? Just like in the primal days, sunrise, sunset, you're getting ready to wind down. That's where we should be. Technology has changed that on us and keeps us up, because as long as we keep looking at those phones and computers all that time, the body's getting, it's tricked. And that's why right now, sometimes it doesn't even know what it's supposed to do, because environmentally and historically, our bodies knew, just like clockwork, and now they don't, because our clocks are thrown off because we throw them off. And so having all that sleep, being able to put yourself down, put things away. I also brought up the fact that you shouldn't open up your phones until 9 or 10. It shouldn't be that complicated, but I know when I would talk to women, I'd ask them what's the first thing they did, and it's reach for the phone. The phone has a lot of bad news, and the phone and all those problems belong to the sites that you're looking at. It doesn't belong in your new start of the day. And if you are, then make sure that the bell that's ringing on that phone for you to open it up is going to inspire you. It's going to give you a blessing for the day. It's going to give you words that are going to carry with you. You want to feel the heal all day long, every day. You want to build and be strong. Women, we need to do this, because being in all this silent pain for all these years, as I said, it started when our menstrual cycle started. Those girls, young girls, they're all going through it. And this is how we've trained ourselves to do these things, instead of, maybe if I start eating this, I'm not going to have that headache. Maybe if I cut down on this during my menstrual cycle. And these were things that I learned. I didn't eat heavy when I knew it was time to, it was my time of the month coming. I made sure my digestion wasn't going to work hard. It was going to have like some yogurts, easy things to digest, make it, hot teas, things that were going to be comforting for the body, because I didn't want it to stress. I didn't want it to be pounding down on some heavy meats, things like that at this time. No, because I need everybody inside to come together and work together. And then later on, when this part is over, I could have whatever that meat was that I was going to do. But you don't want to put our bodies at so much work. That's why we get so tired after we eat, because we don't really recognize it. We just, I'm so tired now. That's because the body's at work. It's working for you. That's what makes you tired. But that's because of a lot of food that you've eaten also, because we really shouldn't get tired. We should be energized, nourished, ready to go. We don't want a bogged down engine. We didn't put, terrible gas in it. You're going to be driving and it's going to choke. It's going to cough. It's going to, while you're hitting on the gas, it's not even going to connect. That gas pedal will, you hit it harder, and wow, all these things, you have to resort and look at it that way, because this is what we do to ourselves. So by cutting and changing these lifestyles, as you start to develop and grow, this is my message to you. And, really understanding with all this ergonomic care and the compassion, certain things that really could be done for women, certain good mats that we can use on the floor for when we're standing up, anti-guard mats, I think it's called. Different things that, again, knowing that when you're going to take this job, you pick and have the correct shoes, which, if they provide us uniforms, could at least support us with a good shoe also, because we're doing all that, and this is where we grow up. These are our stomping grounds, and bringing this comfort to us is so important, because Uh, I know many fear the repercussions of stigmas. Only 14% of women feel comfortable talking about this. And that's not a lot of women. Nearly 40% of women are experiencing menopause related pain and continuing work without any time off. So these are things that we're suppressing in ourselves, putting down, putting off, and we need to release it, receive it, understand it, and work with it to work with us to really bring our bodies into that balance that we're looking for. Because it's not about today that we're looking for, it's about what's going to happen in the years to come. And when you do come out of that work life that you're in, whatever age that's going to be, and most of the time it's 62, unless you're lucky to be at 50. But even my 50-year-olds, and I know that's a lot of police officers and things like that, those female ladies, that I see them, and it's a really hard life that they've had to begin with, and now when they get there, it is a big relief. But some of them that I see, they still carry a lot of stress, and they still present that way, and it's kind of sad, to see the inflammation coming off their faces, their cheeks, the weight gain, the weight gain that we believe cannot change. I actually did a live post, and I was holding an hourglass because they said with hormonal changes in women, we're going to lose that hourglass figure. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true, because it happened. It's been done. I'm doing it, and it's cool. It's so much fun. It's so much fun to feel this way. And I really want to invite everybody to come feel this way, to help change the way you're headed and really redirect your lanes and lines of work that you're in, as far as nourishing yourself for that job, relaxing yourself when you need it. And I mean, really taking that mental time, because all of this, our brains get inflamed also. When we're burning down our house inside with inflammation, brain fog, all these things happen because we are constantly going. And so with that, I really want to stop here, and I'm going to look forward to talking to you next week so I can bring you some more information about that cortisol phase, because that was pretty interesting. But among all that, we're going to talk about witches, and, Halloween's coming up, and, I love to dress like a witch because I get to be this other person at that moment, right? But, sometimes in our daily work and lives, because of the way our hormonal shifts, I know women are saddened by the fact that sometimes they burst out and they're mad and they see it coming and they're overboiling, but who's ever there is going to get it. They're going to feel the wrath. And this is what I mean, those hormones and not knowing the shifts and, this things that women give me in conversations. This is everything I bring to you, from the true stories of the halls that I've walked through that echo with so much wisdom. I just want to bring that to you because I want us to be nourished. I need my friends to be there so we can all go out and really, have a good time out there. So everyone, have a great end of October as we close it out. See you next week. Thank you so much again. Lisa Vasquez coming to you from prconnectionsradio.com. Liberating menopause. Bye, everyone.
This podcast is brought to you by Envision You. Envision You has discovered how to impact spirit, body, and soul with spray technology in just 30 seconds. With Envision You, you can achieve optimal health and start living the life you have always dreamed of. Use the promo code envisionu.com/VernDix to take control of your health naturally. PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.